back on the Pip and Dodds Packers podcast. Delighted to have you with us. John Dodds is the star of the show, but even he takes a back seat today to the great Kevin Harlan, play-by-play man extraordinaire. They have that TOSA connection, and it's just been a delight to, again, go down memory lane. And Kevin, from what John was sharing with me, you knew, I don't know if you were calling play-by-play when Dad and Mom were playing catch with your stroller, down the hill, but pretty early on what you wanted in life, right?
I did, yeah. I wanted to be an airline pilot, and I brought home a report card one time when I was about 11 or so, 12 years old, and my dad took a look at my math grade and then kind of looked over at me and then looked back at that math grade again, which was not very good, and took another look at me and he said, if I had to do it all over again, I might look into radio and television. and that was kind of the thing that spurred me. But in all honesty, and he did say that, but he said, you love to travel. You think you like that kind of life. And he said, think about being in sports, which you love as much as maybe becoming an airline pilot, and you could combine both. And he was right. And so when I was a ball boy with the Packers and not yet able to get on the air, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, during our lunch breaks, I would run into the empty Lambeau Field press box up the stairs. They didn't have the elevator at that time, and run up those stairs and go into the Packer broadcast booth that was used by Jim and Max, and close the door and would envision a game going on the field, an imaginary game, and call the plays out. It was always the Vikings with Fran Tarkington and Ed Marinaro and Chuck Foreman against the Green Bay Packers. And here's Scott Hunter now dropping back to throw for Green Bay and looks downfield and sees Kenny Payne down the sideline. Here's an over the, I used to recreate these things in my mind in that booth, and that was my first theater. And then I'd go home and shut the door and had a little black and white TV in my bedroom and would turn down the sound and watch games and do the games off of TV. And I did golf and swimming and basketball and football and used to do them all the time. And my mom and dad remember, standing outside my door listening, and they either thought, well, we've either got a kook in there, a nutcase, or we've got, a budding broadcaster, and that was it. And so my dad, with the help of Lee Remmel, would let me go up and spot when I was like in my early teens, 12, 13, 14 years old, for the visiting radio and TV broadcast doing Packer games. I remember distinctly being in the press box and spotting and being up there with the Jim Simpsons and people like that, and just how in awe I was. And then I would imagine them after a game, darting to the Green Bay airport, Austin Straubel Field, and catching a flight out of Green Bay to go back home wherever they lived. And I romanticized about it, but knew that I had found my calling. It's rare, I think, for kids to know maybe at that age what they wanted to do, but certainly him letting me have that exposure on the field as a ball boy during the day, able to go to the press box on my lunch break, being able to spot during games when I wasn't on the field, and did that through high school and into college. That was a big thing for me, and it was such a blessing to be able to get to do that. And my dad never batted an eye and always gave me that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, in I remember you wanted to be a pilot, and I think it was a hockey goalie too. You were playing ping pong, I think, or something, to develop your hockey goalie
hand-eye coordination.
Hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
Those were things. About 1977 or so, this is before cable TV, so we had antenna and atmospherics, where every now and then you're in Milwaukee and you could turn the channel and you could get Madison or Chicago or Green Bay. And there was a fluke where I got Green Bay clear as a bell, and they were doing a special on you. And it was you covering a Promontory football game from the press box. I want to say it was channel 11 or channel 5. I couldn't remember.
I think it was John Campbell. Help me, Tom. Was he at channel 2 maybe?
The name is familiar, Kevin, but I don't think I can step up.
Yeah, I know. If you saw him, you'd recognize him.
Yeah.
I think it was John Campbell at Channel 2 when I was a junior or senior in high school. And our high school had a radio station. So, John, your memory is outstanding. And then I did have an internship at Channel 5 with Tom Sutton, I know he was in Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Tom Sutton, that was
Wow.
fun. And he was at WFRV TV, but it was John Campbell at WBAY in Green Bay Channel 2 that did that feature on me when I was doing high school. Our high school, just, I mean, of all things, they had a radio station run by students, 10 watts. And I remember my first broadcast coming home, and I wasn't even able to drive. I don't think I had my driver's license at the time. So someone drove me home. We pulled into the driveway. My dad is sitting on the front porch, and he's got a fistful of legal size yellow notes from our broadcast. He listened to it and took notes of all the things he liked and suggestions, as he put them, suggestions for me. And it was so helpful to have that kind of a journalistic mind and someone who knew the business able to guide me at such a young age. It was that kind of help was unheard of, but he was so into it and so excited about it. I got more excited about the business, but he was my first and only mentor, really. But I remember that moment well. But I remembered John Campbell, John at Channel 2 did that feature.
Yeah, it was great.
Kevin, I know that it's obviously a gift when your dad can watch you in your element. And I can't imagine how gratifying it is for you to know that he's there listening, proud of his entire family, obviously the boys, you, your brothers, but to be able to watch you on the national stage or hear you on the national stage, it must be gratifying, to say the least, I think, to understand a father and son's love and that bond, and then going back all those years to get to this point.
Well, it is special, Tom. My mom will call actually during a broadcast, and it'll be like a 3-minute long voicemail. But what they'll do is, you said, all right, we're sitting here watching, we're in front of the fire, and I'm next to Dad, and he'll, hi Kevin, oh, he'll kind of give that I could hear him in the background, and then she'll hold the phone up to the TV. See, Kevin, we're listening, and and then they'll talk a little bit more. Oh, that was interesting what you said. It's like 3 minutes of that, and I get on there and I see it after a game that they've called, and I know exactly what they've done, and I'll sit there and then I'll play it in the car going back to the hotel, whether I was with Doc Rivers or Steve Kerr or Reggie Miller or whoever. Go, if you want to know why I'm so, listen to my family. Like, here's my mom and dad, and I'll play it loud on the speaker, and the car is just cracking up at the stuff that they say, and it serves as a little levity as we go back to the hotel and are stuck in traffic. But they listen, and they're so great about it, and it is nice to think that I can picture them in the room and in their respective chairs, and I know what fire they've got, and my mom's probably made a pizza or something like that or whatever, and I mean, I just picture my mind's eye sitting there watching the game, and I laugh out loud when they do it. But it means as much to me at 59 as it did when I was 29, to be quite honest, and when I was 19, for goodness' sake.
Absolutely.
So, really
and you'll carry those forward. What a treasure. Okay, JD, anything else? And then maybe we can take another pause and move forward with the NFL. Love to hear Kevin's thoughts on that, particularly in these times and the pack. So you take us there, buddy. Go ahead, John.
I wanted to take a step back and go back. Your dad, you and your family were on Lefebvre Avenue in Wauwatosa until late '65, and then your dad took a job with the St. Louis Baseball Cardinals, and so then you moved away, and which was really too bad for the neighborhood, because I've had this tick ever since. It's just a bad thing, but no. But the people ask me what the legacy of Dan Devine is, and the legacy of Dan Devine, in my opinion, was he brought Bob Harlan back from Missouri and St. Louis to Wisconsin and up in Green Bay. And I guess my question is, what was the tie? Did your dad know Dan Devine, or was it somebody mutually said, hey, there's a guy I know who's from Wisconsin who might help you out? Because he didn't hire your dad as a personnel or as a public relations person. He hired him in business, kind of the business operation. Yeah. So what was the tie that got Dan Devine and your dad together?
Well, he left Marquette because he had talked to Merle Harmon and said, I'd like to get into baseball. I think baseball would be a good move for me. And then he got the baseball Cardinal job in we were in St. Louis from 65 to 71. So that was Bob Gibson and Lou Brock and Kurt Flood and Roger Maris and Orlando Cepeda, Mike Shannon, Tim McCarver, all Del Maxville, Julian Javier. And he took us to spring training down at Al Lang Field. When I was a kid, I used to make model planes in Bob Gibson's, because that's how he passed the time at spring training when he wasn't pitching. After his workout, the team may have a game, but Bob Gibson would go back to his hotel room, and it was a motel. So when you opened the door, it was out into the open, out to a parking lot or whatever. I would pass, and he'd look, "Come on in here, kid." And I'd go in there, and he knew I was my dad's son, and we'd make model airplanes together with Bob Gibson. I got a million stories with the baseball Cardinals, but my dad saw that the life of a baseball person was not conducive to being a family man, and the three kids, and so he was really kind of hoping that he would find an opportunity maybe in the NFL. So the general manager of the baseball Cardinals was a guy named Bing Devine, no relation to Dan Devine at the University of Missouri. And when Dan Devine took the job in Green Bay, he called Bing Devine because the baseball Cardinals were so successful, as respected a sports operation as any at the professional level. And he called Bing Devine. He goes, "I'm looking for a young guy to come up and run my front office with the Packers. Do you have anybody?" And Bing Devine knew my dad's desire maybe to get into football, more time at home, and suggested my dad. So that's how that all came to being. But I do remember the night that Dan Devine was on TV accepting the Green Bay Packer job, and we're all watching. And my dad said, "Boy, I'd give anything to go up and work with Dan Devine in Green Bay, to work with the Green Bay Packers." Because while at Marquette, as a student, he covered the Packers when they would come down to Milwaukee County Stadium and play. So covered Lombardi and covered those teams, grew up a Packer fan, loved the tradition. This was his destiny, really, was to go to Green Bay. But it was wonderful that he got those wonderful years with the baseball Cardinals. They were in 2 World Series. They won in 67. They lost to Denny McClain and the Detroit Lions and Detroit Tigers in 68. So he had the best of all worlds. And he went there to run Dan Devine's front office. And you're right, John, that was kind of one of the nice things about getting up there. But it was Dan Devine that made that happen, because he selected my dad on the suggestion from the Cardinals GM Bing Devine. No, again, no relation.
Ironically, Marquette dropping football probably assured that your dad wasn't going to be there 10, 15, 20 years because he loved football.
He did.
But Marquette dropping football might have led to 2 Super Bowls for the Green Bay Packers, hiring Ron Wolf and then that 96 title, and then hiring Ted Thompson and getting that 2010 title. So it's ironic how all this works. And my dad would always tell a story that he and your dad were watching a football game, a Packer football game, and it might have been the 62 championship game. And he turned to my dad and said, "My dream job would be the PR job of the Green Bay Packers." Oh, okay. You do want to get into football. So he had expressed that in the early 60s.
Yeah. His Vince Lombardi's PR director was Tom Miller initially. Tom Miller played. Tom Miller then went into an administrative position. Then they hired Chuck Lane, and Chuck Lane came from the Harlem Globetrotters. He was the PR director for the Harlem Globetrotters, and then came into Green Bay and served under Lombardi, and then Devine and all these other coaches that would follow. Bart Starr, certainly, and Forrest Gregg, and Phil Bankston for that short time. So that role was not there. But I think my dad must have seen, kind of like my brother Brian in Chicago, who was with the Bears, maybe saw that there was a ceiling with being a media relations director, public relations director, that's what it was called at that time, and knew that maybe he had to get involved in a front office position in another area to have, some growth. So he may have seen it there. My dad's first love is journalism. He loves journalism, wanted to be a columnist for the Des Moines Register in Des Moines, Iowa. Grew up idolizing a guy named Maury White, who was the columnist for the Des Moines Register. Still subscribes to the Des Moines Register to this day, even though Maury White has since passed, certainly. But But that's what he always, I think initially that's what he wanted to do. And then once he was at Marquette and was near the Packers, covered them as a student for the Marquette paper and for UPI once he got out of college, I think he saw, boy, the NFL is really something else. And here I'm seeing a transformative organization in Green Bay with a coach that clearly is different than any other that maybe the sport has seen since the Paul Browns or the Hallises or even Curly Lambeau in Vince Lombardi. So he saw something very unique and special. And I think he saw the CBS contract at the time to broadcast the NFL. I think the first contract was like $4 million. The rights to broadcast the NFL from that contract to the next went from $4 million to $36 million and grew, as we've seen over the years. So I think he felt and saw what the NFL was going to become, and truly was there to witness kind of the birth after the 58 championship game between the Giants and Colts and the touchdown run in overtime to Green Bay's arrival on the scene, what they meant to the 60s, the incredible growth of the NFL. So he may have been a little bit ahead of his time and could sense what the NFL was doing and where it was going.
Absolutely amazing. Well, we're going to pause again. I can remember I was bad at math too, Kevin, and 5 minutes seemed like an eternity, and we've gone a half hour here, and it seems like 5 minutes. So we're going to we'll take a time out, and then we'll wrap it up and take it, John, anywhere you and Kevin want to go.